very good evening and welcome to tonight's edition of Primetime News here on TV1. You're joining me, Devi Paldano. Now, before we head into your stories in more detail, let's first take a look at your headlines this evening.
Four Sri Lankans who attempted to illegally enter the US while hiding inside a ship as stowaways discovered while passing the Suez Canal. Local government election further delayed. Is Basil Rajapaksa the next SLPP presidential candidate? Racket of buying sugar from Palvatta and Sevanagala and selling for high prices exposed. University teachers ready to mark answer scripts if interim solution is provided. Anti-Terrorism Act, that is to replace the PTA, is an even more serious threat to democracy. A statement from over 100 organizations and individuals. Proposed anti-corruption law alone cannot solve the plague of systemic corruption in Sri Lanka, says TISL.
Now, taking a look at one of your headline-making stories, 4 Sri Lankan men who boarded a vessel anchored at the Colombo port to illegally travel as stowaways were discovered when the ship was passing through the Suez Canal. The men were handed over to the Sri Lanka police yesterday and were remanded to the 18th of April by Acting Magistrate of Galle, Premaratna Thiranagama.
4 Sri Lankan men had secretly boarded a Liberian-flagged vessel that was anchored at the Colombo port on the 24th of March. The vessel was heading to the United States of America and the Sri Lankan stowaways was discovered when it was passing the Suez Canal. The Sri Lankan men were dressed as part of the ship's crew when they were discovered. Following their discovery, the men were handed over to another vessel that was passing by and was heading to China so that they can be handed over to the Sri Lankan authorities. The 4 men were handed over to Sri Lankan authorities in the seas of the Galle harbour. The men were identified as residents of Mullaitivu, Chunnakam, Kites and Valivetturai. The Department of Immigration and Immigration said a special investigation was launched to determine how these men entered the Colombo port and the vessel.
Sri Lanka's Election Commission says that the local government election cannot be held on the 25th of April this year. It noted that a date for the election will be decided based on a court order or based on the provision of funds. Sri Lanka's local government election was scheduled to be held on the 9th of March 2023. However, as the Treasury did not release funds, it was postponed indefinitely. Thereafter, the Election Commission decided to conduct the elections on the 25th of April 2023. However, the Treasury had not allocated the necessary funds for the election. Sri Lanka's Election Commission met today to decide on the local government election 2023 and announced it would be further delayed. However, the statement from the Election Commission noted that it would continue with the measures taken to conduct the local government elections. The preliminary draft of the report of the National Committee on Delimitation containing the Grama Niladhari divisions for local government bodies was handed over to Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena. The primary objective of this committee was to ensure that the number of local government members was reduced from 8,000 to around 4,000.
This will not be the last report because the tenure of the committee was extended to the 30th of April 2023. We will now consider the proposals put forward by the political parties, civil groups, religious leaders and others and make the necessary amendments and complete the report by the 30th of April. Today we handed over the report on the respective Grama Niladhari divisions. The draft will be produced at district secretariats and the local government institutions from the 17th of April. If there are any changes that should be made, one can inform the committee within 10 days.
අවශ්‍ය නම් මේක පදනම් කරගෙන මැතිවරණය තියන්න හැකියාවක් තියෙනවා එහෙම හිතන්න පුළුවන් කවුරු හරි. මැතිවරණය තියෙන එක අපට අදාළ නැහැ නේ.
The Election Commission should decide on holding the election. It is not the job of the Committee on Delimitation.
ද කියන එක කමිෂන් සභාවේ වැඩක් සීමා නිර්ණය කමිෂන් සභාවේ වැඩක් නෙවෙයි.
The SLPP says that the presidential election will take place in another 1.5 years.
We cannot compare the leadership of Mahinda Rajapaksa and Ranil Wickremesinghe. We have a certain degree of respect towards Ranil Wickremesinghe. That is why when Gotabaya Rajapaksa could not face the conspiracy that was afoot to plague this country with terror and destroy democracy, we handed over the power to Ranil Wickremesinghe. We controlled the situation. We brought him to power because we believed in him. However, I do not believe it is wise to compare him with Mahinda Rajapaksa. To our supporters, Mahinda Rajapaksa is the leader who wants won the war and is not a leader who tried to divide the country.
දිනපු නායකයෙක් මිසක් රට බෙදන්න අවශ්‍ය පියවර ගත්ත නායකයෙක් නෙවෙයි.
කාංචන විජේසේකර අමාත්‍යවරයා සඳහන් කරලා තිබුණා මේ රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ වත්මන් ජනාධිපතිතුමා තමයි මීළඟ ජනාධිපති අපේක්ෂකයාට සුදුසු කියන කාරණාව. ඒ වගේ එතකොට ශ්‍රී ලංකා පොදු ජන පෙරමුණ දැන් ඉන්නේ මත දෙකකද?
කාංචන විජේසේකර අමාත්‍යවරයා
What Minister Kanchana Wijesekara said was that Ranil Wickremesinghe can also be considered for the future presidential election. It does not mean that he will be the SLPP presidential candidate. We must decide on that from within the party. I can state that we have suitable candidates who can come forward for the presidential election.
ඊළඟ ජනාධිපතිවරණයට ඉදිරිපත් කළ හැකි සුදුසු අපේක්ෂකයින් අපි සතුව ඉන්නවා.
වර්තමාන ජනාධිපති රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මහත්මයාට වඩා මීළඟ ජනාධිපති අපේක්ෂකත්වයට සුදුසු කෙනෙක් ශ්‍රී ලංකා පොදු ජන පෙරමුණේ දැන් ඉන්නවද?
ඉන්නවා. අනිවාර්යෙන් ඉන්නවා.
ඔය කියන්නේ බැසිල් රාජපක්ෂ මහත්මයා ගැනද?
ඔබ බැසිල් රාජපක්ෂ මහත්මයා ගැන අහනවා නම් මං කියනවා එතුමා මේ රටට නායකත්වය දෙන්න ඉතාම සුදුසු පුද්ගලයෙක්.
ඒ කියන්නේ ඊළඟ ජනාධිපති අපේක්ෂකයා බැසිල් රාජපක්ෂ මහත්මයා වෙන්න පුළුවන් කියන එකනේ ඔබතුමා ඔය කියන්නේ?
ඔව් එතුමා වෙන්නත් පුළුවන්.
Yes, it could be him. Right now the country needs a local government election. It is not wise to speak about presidential election candidates for an election that will come after a year.
ප්‍රතිවරණයේ අපේක්ෂකයින් සම්බන්ධව දැන්ම කතා කිරීම මං හිතන්නේ බොහොම නිෂ්ඵල කාරණයක්.
රංගේ බණ්ඩාර මහත්මයා සඳහන් කරනවා 2025 දක්වා රට බේරාගත් නායකයා එතුමයි රට ඉදිරියට පාලනය කළ යුත්තේ කියන කාරණේ.
රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මැතිතුමා මේ රටේ ජනාධිපති
Ranil Wickremesinghe tried to be elected as the president on several occasions. However, the people did not vote. Yet, we as the SLPP decided to appoint him as president for the remaining mandate period of Gotabaya Rajapaksa. That is until November 2024. As a political party, we will support him with all facilities and strength until that time. Ranil Wickremesinghe has not mentioned anywhere of his intentions to run for president. It is pointless to keep on talking about a future presidential candidate.
ප්‍රතිවරණ අපේක්ෂකත්වයේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් කතා කිරීම කිසිම පදනම් විරහිත නිෂ්ඵල කාර්යයක්.
Comments were made by the Freedom People's Alliance today.
We can see clearly that there is a division being created within the government. We have no business regarding this, but we can see this. Government MPs and state ministers say that a presidential election is coming soon. In exactly 13 months, a presidential election is to be announced. By May 2024, a presidential election must be called for, and even before November the same year, it must be held. Much can happen in the government within these 13 months. The start of this was when a few MPs said that they favour Ranil. Another side said that they would favour another. There is a division, we know this. Once the stage is set again, those who went away would claim that it is their time again. They have to sort this mess out. Most government MPs think that the country is their backyard. This is why they are taking turns with the country. This should not be the case. The people took to the streets and said so. If they don't understand this, it is their own bad luck.
මේ රටේ ජනතාව එළියට ඇවිල්ලා කිව්වේ මේක ඇත්තටම අපේ දේශපාලන නායකයන්ට තේරෙන්නේ නැත්නම් ඒක එතුමාලගේ අවාසනාව.
Former chairman of the Election Commission, Mahinda Deshapriya, commented on a presidential election.
It seems like the election will only be held next year. Otherwise, 150 MPs can vote for a constitutional amendment and hold an election even tomorrow.
අද තියන්න නම් ඕනේ. ඒක තියන්න පුළුවන් තේරීපත්තු ජනාධිපතිවරු විතරයි. මේ ජනාධිපතිවරයා තෝරා පත් කරගනු ලැබු.
ඕකට එකද වෙනස වෙන්නේ. අනේ සියලු බලතලයි.
කොමයිටි මේක විතරයි නැත්තේ.
A collective of 102 organizations and individuals have written to the diplomatic missions in Colombo, highlighting serious concerns with regard to the proposed Anti-Terrorism Act.
A collective of 102 organizations and individuals state that the ATA, which is intended to replace the Draconian Prevention of Terrorism Act, the PTA, is an even more serious threat to democracy in Sri Lanka. They demand that the government withdraw this atrocious proposed law with immediate effect and repeal the Prevention of Terrorism Act. A statement adds that the government of Sri Lanka has disingenuously proposed a law with a far greater capacity to infringe the human rights of its citizens than the PTA. The ATA both retains and enhances PTA provisions that will shrink the space for active civilian participation in democracy, subject communities to intensive state surveillance and militarize the state, thus intensifying the damage done by the PTA. They urge the Sri Lankan government to 1. Immediately withdraw the proposed Anti-Terrorism Act gazetted on the 17th of March 2023. 2. commit to an immediate moratorium on the use of the PTA and take expeditious measures to repeal it. 3. Consider the extensive array of existing terrorism-related legislation in Sri Lanka, including the terrorism-related offences in the Penal Code, as part of Sri Lanka's compliance with international obligations to have comprehensive legislation to counter terrorism. 4. Review the existing legal framework for countering terrorism to identify any specific offences against the state that need to be introduced, draft well-defined offences for insertion into the Penal Code, which is subject to the safeguards in the Criminal Procedure Code, and make any deviations from normal safeguards afforded to criminal suspects proportionate and justified, and publish these for public consultation prior to enactment.
The Sri Lanka Podujana Perumana announced today that the anti-terrorism bill that even lacks the confidence of the Justice Minister should be reviewed by a committee of experts. SLPP General Secretary said that the party will not agree with any bill or legislation that obstructs the rights of the people.
පළවෙනි කාරණය තමයි අපි පක්ෂයක් හැටියට කිසිම ආකාර
As a party, the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna would never agree to any bill or legislation that curtails the people's fundamental right to expression. We will also not agree to any bill or legislation that would do away with the rights of the people to secure their fundamental rights. We need to discuss this bill based on these 2 points. The definition of terrorism, as mentioned in the anti-terrorism bill, should be subject to certain limitations and restrictions. If the bill defines every single act of dissent as terrorism, that bill is not one that is suitable for a democratic society. Based on the views expressed in the media, it appears that the Justice Minister, who is moving the bill, also is not confident about the said piece of legislation. A request was made from the President to review the bill and appoint a committee of experts to study the matter and introduce a bill that does not violate the principles of democracy. When a government is introducing a bill, the government should definitely place its confidence in the piece of legislation, and in the absence of such confidence, there is no necessity to introduce such legislation. That is our position.
ප්‍රධානම කාරණය එවැනි විශ්වාසයක් නැත්නම් එවැනි පනතක් ගෙනා යුතු නැහැ කියන එක තමයි අපේ මතය.
However, 2 other SLPP members expressed different views with regard to the anti-terrorism bill.
What we have is an act that was drafted in the 70s. The level of terrorism at the time was different. If a country does not adapt to the changes in terrorism and amend the laws, there is no future for such a country. Terrorism has changed. We need the Anti-Terrorism Act to protect the country.
We formed the government, but the government formed by the people was chased away by the hooligans. We are somewhat disappointed over Gotabaya Rajapaksa, Ranil and us. We have our minor differences, but we respect the way those hooligans were treated. No one can threaten the influence of the people's sovereignty. If an act to prevent terrorism is brought, we will welcome it with open arms and stand for it.
Justice Minister Dr. Vijayadasa Rajapaksa told News First that the anti-terrorism bill will be tabled in Parliament on the 25th of April.
අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ අප්‍රේල් මාසේ 25 වෙනිදා ඉදිරිපත් කරන්න.
Opposition leader Sajid Premadasa said the proposed Broadcasting Authority Act is an approach by the government to suppress the media in order to further strengthen the Anti-Terrorism Act.
නිදහස් මාධ්‍යයක් නොමැති තැන
When a country lacks media freedom, it will also lack democracy. Instead, it will remain with dictatorship and monopoly. Why are they introducing a Broadcast Authority Act to regulate the media? It is an act that will keep important facts that the people must know away from them. This is an attempt to create a puppet media culture in the country where only pro-government media institutions exist. We must fight against these attempts to control media in the country. Transparency International Sri Lanka has welcomed the new anti-corruption bill but has flagged 2 major concerns.
We find that this law has a section that says that it prevails over all other written law. So this law, being the law that comes later, is then seeking to prevail over the Right to Information Act as well. And now you put into that context that this law requires every official that joins the Bribery Commission to sign an oath of secrecy, which means that they'll be bound by secrecy, including the information officer. And the only exception provided for that is that the Director General may, with the authorization of the Commission, release certain information to social media and to the mainstream media purportedly to maintain transparency. So that creates a different regime to what is foreseen under the Right to Information Act, and therefore flies in the face of and goes against the transparency and accountability that such a law at a time like this, especially when citizens have lost faith in law enforcement, lost faith in accountability for the crimes of corruption that has brought this country to its knees, this is a particular problem. And the second one is about Section 119 that has been debated now in society quite a bit. Now, there is an equivalent of Section 119 that says that if a person knowingly makes a complaint that doesn't, in their belief, amount to a crime or an offence under this law, that they can be liable to a fine and or imprisonment. This exists even in the current law. Now, the new law also seeks to bring in this as an offence. However, to the best of our knowledge, and we are informed that this offence has never been used in Sri Lanka. No prosecution has happened under this offence. Why is there a need for us to bring in such a regressive provision into the new law? Because it can create a situation where people hesitate that they might be witch hunted or targeted for merely having made a complaint, and this applies to organizations like TISL as well. There is this understanding or this narrative that has been created that this law will solve all the problems of corruption in Sri Lanka, and that this law covers all the aspects of corruption in Sri Lanka. It certainly does not. It covers certain aspects of corruption, and it does so well in certain instances. We have had laws for years in Sri Lanka that are able to address the issues of large-scale corruption, grand corruption that Sri Lanka is experiencing currently. The lack of law has never been the problem in addressing the issue of corruption in Sri Lanka. We are operating in a system which we are beginning to call state capture, where the institutions of the state, including the legislature, the executive, law enforcement authorities, the public service, operates in the interests of a few and not in the interests of the public.
Therefore, Transparency International Sri Lanka calls upon the government, with the technical assistance of the International Monetary Fund, to rectify these concerns in the law forthwith, and further to continue to engage with citizens and experts in civil society in order to adopt a holistic approach to achieve the envisaged goal of eradicating corruption in Sri Lanka.
What the new law does is that it requires that all declarations of assets and liabilities be submitted to a central electronic system that is held within the SIABOC, the Bribery Commission, and that this system, the electronic system, has a way to verify and also raise red flags if there are misdeclarations or if there are unusual situations where there is an unusual amassing of wealth. So this is a very positive change in the law, and it also requires that an asset declaration once submitted, subject to a redaction of sensitive information, will be publicly available for access by citizens and civil society, as well as law enforcement. A second critical change is that this law, this proposed law in its current form, brings within its ambit private sector bribery. That is, bribery that the private sector engages in vis-a-vis other private sector actors. And it would hold senior officials in the private sector, owners of companies, etc., liable for carrying out bribery. It also brings within its ambit sports-related corruption, and also the issue of sexual bribery. This law brings it within its ambit and specifically recognizes it, empowering people to complain about it, and also making it the norm for prosecutions to happen on that basis and not merely on the basis of sexual harassment. It certifies and verifies further the power that the Bribery Commission would have to carry out investigations on its own motion without having to resort to the previous position, which is where it would wait for a complaint to be made, even where there is a big conversation happening in society about a particular type of corruption that has happened.
The Palvatta and Sevanagala sugar companies were taken over by the state via the Underperforming Enterprises and Underutilized Assets Act. At present, these two companies operate under the Lanka Sugar Company Private Limited, a fully government-owned company. Following the COVID pandemic, the government decided to offer brown sugar produced by the Palvatta and Sevanagala sugar companies to cooperative societies at a lower price than the wholesale price as a measure to provide relief to the low-income communities. Accordingly, sugar stocks were sold to private buyers at competitive prices through the tender process and to cooperative societies at lower concessional prices. However, allegations have been raised that this process had led to widespread corruption. Registered buyers with Lanka Sugar Company Private Limited said that a sugar racket is taking place by using the names of cooperative societies. At the most recent tender process, a kilogram of brown sugar was sold at 340 rupees to private buyers, while cooperative societies were sold a kilogram of brown sugar at 300 rupees.
When we purchased a kilogram for 340 rupees following an open tender process, the sugar company sells sugar to selective cooperative societies for 300 rupees, subject to political intervention. They in turn sell the sugar for a higher price to errant traders.
On the 7th of last March, this letter was forwarded to Lanka Sugar Company Private Limited, stating that a sum of 14.3 million was deposited to procure 50,000 kilograms of sugar in the name of Hasalaka Cooperative Society Limited. It is mentioned in the letter that 2 lorries will be sent for that purpose on the 8th of March. However, when News First contacted the chairman of Hasalaka Cooperative Society Limited, he said that they never ordered such a consignment of sugar. He also said that the cooperative society does not have the ability to sell a large stock of sugar. It is reported that parties connected to this malpractice earned an undue profit of 2 million rupees or more from this transaction alone.
Sugar was dispatched to a number of cooperative societies in the Galle and Kandy districts. I personally inquired from the general managers and the accountants of the Upper Lelwala and Habaraduwa cooperatives, and they said they never purchased sugar from the Lanka Sugar Company. I can responsibly state that a truck bound to the Habaraduwa Cooperative Society was dispatched last night, and another 400 bags of sugar was dispatched claiming to be bound to the Upper Lelwala Cooperative Society. Political intervention is causing damage to the nation and the sugar company.
Major General Sarda Samarakun, the chairman of Lanka Sugar Company Private Limited, told News First that sugar stocks are dispatched as per the letters sent by the respective ministry. He said that it is not his responsibility to ascertain whether the sugar stocks reach the consumers through the proper channels. However, the executive director of Lanka Sugar Company Private Limited said that necessary measures will be taken with regard to the cooperative societies.
We deviate from the tender process to release sugar for cooperative societies located across the country based on their requests. We are informed that the sugar given to the cooperative societies are being sold by other traders. If we can obtain verified information, we will blacklist the cooperative societies that sold the consignment of sugar. This sugar is prepared for the poor people, and if it is being sold to the shops, we will request the Consumer Affairs Authority to make an inquiry and report back to us so that we can stop issuing sugar to those cooperative societies.
Who are these people who loot from the brown sugar consignments prepared to be sold for a concessionary price to the low-income earners in the country? Shouldn't an immediate investigation take place and put an end to this malpractice that is costing the nation? Do you remember the previous sugar tax scam? A report submitted by the Ministry of Finance to the Finance Committee of the Parliament revealed that the tax revenue lost to the country due to the reduced import tax was 16 billion rupees. Corporates that were close to the ruling elite made undue profits from this. Shouldn't immediate action be taken before the malpractices of the Lanka Sugar Company Private Limited turn into serious corrupt deals?
The Commission to investigate allegations of bribery or corruption recorded a statement from MP Dayasiri Jayasekara over a complaint that he made alleging that the CPC was involved in fraud and corruption when importing crude to the country.
I provided them with all the information in my possession. I believe a proper investigation will take place. This malpractice is still continuing, especially with regard to the imports from Coral Energy and other companies. We will continue to act on fraud and corruption, and I believe the Commission to investigate allegations of bribery or corruption will conduct a proper inquiry.
The Federation of University Teachers Association says that they can evaluate the GCE Advanced Level Examination answer scripts and resume university activities if an interim solution can be provided for their demands. The evaluation of answer scripts for the GCE Advanced Level Examinations 2022 has been delayed for 48 days.
The GCE Advanced Level Examinations for the year 2022 were held in the month of January 2023. The evaluation of answer scripts of the examinations was slated to begin on the 22nd of February. However, it was delayed as an insufficient number of teachers applied for the process. The evaluation of advanced level examinations answer scripts is conducted primarily by school teachers, and the process is supervised by university teachers. About 19,000 advanced level teachers and 1,400 university teachers are required for this purpose. The Federation of University Teachers Association withdrew from the evaluation of answer scripts in line with the recent strike launched by the Professional Trade Union Collective at a time when the evaluation process was already delayed.
We had informed the government that we would withdraw from the evaluation of answer scripts for the GCE advanced level exams even before the examination was to be held. We would like to state to the people of this country that this was not a problem created by us. This is a problem created by this government, and we asked that the government solve it. There was plenty of time to solve it. The government did nothing. We are ready to go back to evaluate the examination answer scripts at any time. However, we need an immediate solution to this issue, at least an interim solution, before the complete solution can be provided. If a solution is received, then we would go back to work from tomorrow.
The Salon Teachers Union expressed their views.
19,000 teachers are required for the evaluation of advanced level answer scripts, but only 12,000 have applied. What is the reason for this? The issue is that the stipend provided for the teachers to evaluate answer scripts being insufficient, and it has been persisting for so long. The government is not providing the stipend that was promised as well. An incentive must be given to the teachers who have not applied for the job. All they have attempted was to turn parents and children against university teachers. This is not what has to happen.
The Teachers Union of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna maintain an opposing position.
We have given 3 to 4 times more in terms of concessions compared to the time that the answer scripts were being evaluated. When a teacher evaluates answer scripts, the teacher's knowledge about that subject also increases. This too is a good experience. Money was not the only reason why teachers used to check answer scripts. Some teachers union leaders who have not seen A-level answer scripts can't see it in the future because they haven't met the relevant qualifications.
The students who sat at the GCE Advanced Level Examination for the year 2022 have been severely affected by the delay in the evaluation of examination answer scripts. The students were slated to sit for their GCE Advanced Level Examinations in August 2022, yet they sat for the examination 5 months later in January 2023. This is the same batch of students who sat for the GCE O-Level Examinations in 2019 and whose results were delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. While the advanced level classes for these students were delayed, they could not attend school due to various issues, including the lockdown and the fuel crisis. They lost a crucial part of their school education and yet sat for the GCE Advanced Level Examination despite the difficulties and challenges of accessing online education, and in the end were also affected by the power cuts. Time taken to solve the issues is time that these students will never get back. Isn't it time that the officials and the trade unions come together and find a solution to this issue?
The Department of Animal Protection and Health had granted approval for the second consignment of eggs imported from India.
The second consignment of eggs were imported from India, and Sri Lanka Customs will release the eggs to the Sri Lanka State Trading General Corporation. Director General of the Department of Animal Production and Health, Dr. Hemali Kothalawala, told News First, samples from the third consignment of imported eggs are being subject to tests.
A majority of Sri Lankans have been battered by the economic crisis, rising inflation and unemployment. Though the prices of certain goods reduced, most Sri Lankans still don't have high hopes regarding the new year. In light of the Sinhalese and Tamil New Year, Gammadda launched its latest initiative to provide dry rations to families across the island, making their lives that much brighter this new year.
Sri Lanka's economic crisis has deprived many families from having 3 meals a day. Aware of their plight, Gammadda stepped in to help in every way possible. For the fourth consecutive day, Gammadda distributed dry ration packs to families. This project, which will conclude on Wednesday, aims to provide dry ration packs to more than 1,000 selected families across Sri Lanka. Families for this project were selected based on several criteria approved by respective divisional secretariats in coordination with Gramanildari officers. On Tuesday, Gammadda visited Galembidruwava, Hatton, Thangol, Hikkaduwa, Matara, Kahavatta, Mullatiu, Vaunia, Trincomalee, Bandarawala, Kantale, Kulyapitiya, Jaffna, Mana, Batticaloa and Colombo. Gammadda's true strength is with the people. While enhancing our portfolio of rural development projects, Gammadda stands firm in its resolve on addressing the starvation of the people.
News First with the people.
The donation of dry rations to the needy people of Sri Lanka by the Buddhist temples and the people of China took place in Kegol.
Chinese Ambassador Ki Zheng-hong joined State Minister of Foreign Affairs Tharaka Balasuriya to celebrate the Sinhala and Tamil New Year via a donation ceremony of 500 dry ration boxes at the Town Hall of Kegol on Tuesday evening.
In the past 3 years, we worked together, fight against COVID-19 and revive economy, and tide over the current difficult time. China and Sri Lanka always stand together. We support together each other as your truly friend, traditional friend. I promise you, the Chinese government and the Chinese people will continue to provide assistance of economic and social development of Sri Lanka. I do believe with joint efforts, our Sri Lanka friends will overcome the temporary difficult time and urge a better future.
Sri Lanka's Foreign Minister, President's Council Ali Sabri requested the Colombo-based diplomatic corps to review their travel advisories imposed on Sri Lanka.
Minister of Foreign Affairs President's Council Ali Sabri said that lifting the advisories would reflect the stability in the country, which would further encourage tourist influx. Minister Ali Sabri convened a briefing on current developments in Sri Lanka for the Colombo-based diplomatic corps on Monday. The minister thanked the international community for the support extended to Sri Lanka towards economic recovery and briefed on progress made in this regard.
The organizers of Deep Jungle that led to much controversy claimed that they informed all parties about their plans, and yet they were denied permission.
We've been operating Deep Jungle as a program to boost tourism and generate dollar revenue. We've been doing it since 2017. Deep Jungle means within Sri Lanka and not deep inside the jungle. We have informed all parties, the Ministry of Tourism, CEA, Public Security Minister, Ministry of Wildlife and Department of Archaeology cannot say we did not inform them. We also informed the Gramanildari all the way up to the presidents, namely Maithripala Sirisena, Gotabaya Gotabaya Rajapaksa and Ranil Wickremesinghe. Right now in Sri Lanka, a tourism-based event took place for 7 days non-stop in Tangol that has been going on for 5 years. If a foreign national comes to do an event, there is a separate law. And if a Sri Lankan is doing an event, there is a separate law. Those people got the support, but we Sri Lankans did not.
And with that, we wrap up primetime news here on TV1. For more news, log on to our award-winning website, that is www.newsfirst.lk. For the News First team, I'm Devi Paldan. Take care and good night.